Talk with the Doc on Tuesday morning with Dr. Tim McKnight in after the Labor Day holiday weekend. So I hope that treated you well.
It was a nice weekend. Yeah, too bad it was raining, but we still made it a good weekend.
Well, we opened the garage door and managed to have the grill going there. Got some protein that way.
Felt a little bit like Labor Day, right?
It did. So, we got our protein, but is that what we should have done?
Well, probably depends on the course of the type of protein you're eating.
Okay.
And the answer is, for most people, probably not.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to make a lot of enemies this morning, but
That's okay.
A lot of studies suggest that animal protein, animal flesh, is not really the best for us. And there's a number of reasons why. One of the studies that was, I think, a hallmark was Dr. Bird in the University of Pennsylvania, probably 15 years ago, did a study with fast foods, which are primarily animal protein. So this was a popular breakfast combination where you get a biscuit with eggs and sausage and cheese, and then a side of hash browns. So the one group ate that for breakfast, and they measured their blood pressure, and they saw that their blood pressure was elevated for 8 hours. It took 8 hours for the blood pressure to come back down. And the control group was a group that ate shredded wheat for breakfast. So no fat, no sugar really, but complex carbohydrates. This group did not have that same change in their blood pressure. So this was repeated over and over again, and the conclusion was that something happened to the lining of the arteries to constrict them so that they wouldn't relax, that caused the blood pressure elevation. And it's a combination of the animal fats, the saturated fats, as well as the protein itself that was believed to be the cause for this. Now, this also has a link if you're thinking about a blood flow issue where you can't get the arteries to dilate when they should. This also relates back to erectile dysfunction. So this is another one of the explanations for erectile dysfunction in men as they get older. The endothelial lining of the arteries are not as healthy, and they can be temporarily damaged by animal proteins and animal fats. And it takes 8 hours to recover. Mm-hmm. But the older you get and the more damage you have, the harder it is to recover. So, we can give it Viagra and Cialis, but why don't the men who have this issue, why don't they try going to a diet that has virtually no animal protein in it and see if it improves the issue? So there's other studies that have been done. There was a study many years ago, well, I'd say maybe 5 years ago, on prostate cancer, and they looked at different types of dietary protein and did it have an association or a correlation with prostate cancer. And they found that, yes, it did. The chicken actually had the highest risk of prostate cancer compared to the other types of meats that you would eat. Mm-hmm. But it was not so much the chicken itself that was bad. It was the volume of chicken that people eat, because a lot of people are trying to stay away from red meat, and so chicken becomes the go-to. So 18% increase the risk of prostate cancer with that. We also know that the processed meats, so the packages of ham and turkey and those other meats that you get at the store, and hot dogs and brats and stuff, those have nitrosamines in them, and when they're heated up, they convert to these, we call them heterocyclic amines, and they have direct injury to the lining of blood vessels as well. They just sort of clog everything up. The red blood cells don't move through the arteries as well, the tiny capillaries as well, and there's a thought that it might even impair insulin signaling and be linked to diabetes. So the people who are really into this research, they're saying that these animal proteins have a direct link with type 2 diabetes. And if you're trying to manage type 2 diabetes, you should get these animal proteins out of your diet.
But we need protein. So where should it come from?
You can get protein from plant sources. So nuts and seeds, beans and peas, lentils, and vegetables have protein in them. Beans are an excellent source of protein. You can get some protein in your complex carbohydrates. You can get it in oatmeal. You can get it in wheat. We just have to be, I think the issue is, how much protein do you need?
Yeah.
Right? So many people believe you should have, for each pound of body weight, you should have a half a gram. So if you're 200 pounds, you should have 100 grams a day. Now, most 200-pound people wouldn't think of that, or they're trying to get that. And most probably less than that. Maybe 70 grams a day is the typical 200-pound person. But the people who do research in plant protein say, no, you only need about 50 grams a day. And if you start looking at this and you calculate this, if you're eating a healthy diet with those things that I talked about, beans and peas and lentils and tofu and plant proteins, you'll probably get close to 50 grams a day. And then you see, this is kind of anecdotal, but you see athletes, elite athletes, who go pretty much meat-free, and they say their performance improves, their endurance improves, their strength improves. One of the logical arguments is you look at some of the most muscular animals on the planet, and they're herbivores. They eat plants. And all protein really begins in plants. I mean, the sun, the sun, as it stimulates the growth of a plant, the plant will also absorb nitrogen from the atmosphere, and from that nitrogen the plant can make proteins. So you have a cow eating grass, and they're getting their protein from the grass, and they're able to utilize it really well. And then when we're growing cows to sell for a steakhouse, these are not the healthy cows. They're not all pasture fed. They're pasture fed initially, but then as soon as they're weaned to a certain age, they're in a feedlot and they're eating high amounts of cornmeal and other things that grow them fast, because it's an industry. The faster you can get that cow to market, the more money you can make. So let's get them big and fat. And of course, that steak tastes really juicy because of the fat in it, the corn fatty acids in it. But it's not necessarily healthy. And those fats are very high in omega-6 fatty acids, which we know are inflammatory. And plants themselves are higher in omega-3s, generally speaking. The best sorts of omega-3s in our food supply is primarily from plants. And so all of this just kind of points to the idea that we really need to reduce their intake of animal flesh. And science is continually evolving, and we've kind of picked on sugar for a long time. Mm-hmm. I still think we need to be careful with sugar. But what if it's a combination of animal proteins and sugar that's causing this propensity towards diabetes? The experts say that in 25 years, 1/3 of Americans will be diabetic. We'll be fighting all those conditions that uncontrolled diabetes causes. So we're clearly not winning this battle. And what's interesting to me is if you go to the website, or if you just Google American Heart Association and sponsors, you'll see that it's the dairy industry, it's the poultry industry, it's the beef industry. They're all sponsoring the American Heart Association. And when you go to the American Heart Association website, and you look for recommendations to lower your risk for heart disease, they'll say decrease your intake of red meat, but they'll say chicken is safe and effective. But is it really as safe and effective as we think? And you can do the same thing for the American Cancer Society. You can do the same thing for an American Diabetic Association. Look at their sponsors, and you'll see some conflict there. You'll see some things that make you question, what is really happening here? Are we really getting fed the right information? Unfortunately, I don't trust those agencies.
Well, that money could be influencing what's coming out on the website.
That's the thought. It's a big industry. And when the medical experts in those associations are interviewed, they don't really want to go into, well, why are these things not there? They'll walk away, or they'll defer the interview. So it just raises questions. And then if you look just logically, let's just think logically. Your tooth, the structure of your mouth, your teeth structure. As humans, we don't have canines. We have canines, but they're not really intended to tear flesh. They're not sharp. They're designed to cut and chew. They're designed to cut a carrot and to chew it up, or to grind, some asparagus or broccoli. And so our tooth structure looks more like the carnivores. Looks more like our mouth looks a lot more like a cow's mouth than a cat's mouth, or a carnivorous animal, a wolf, or a tiger. So I think there's another hint there that we really need to keep our animal protein intake down. And I'm not ready to declare that we should be strictly vegetarian.
I was going to ask. There is some moderation available, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where maybe you do the experiment on yourself. If these things are so bad for us, if they cause inflammation and they cause the arteries to constrict, avoid those proteins for, say, 2 weeks and see if your blood pressure doesn't come down. See if your joint pain and your arthritis pain and your tendonitis doesn't improve. See if your erectile dysfunction improves. See if your energy level improves. See if your blood sugar comes down. I mean, do the experiment on yourself. And the cool thing about this is it doesn't take long for the body to respond. It doesn't take long for these foods to cause problems, but if we're eating these foods every day, we're not going to recognize that. We're just thinking, well, I ate because I'm older and I was in the garden too long yesterday. But if you make these changes, there should be a pretty significant change within 2 or 3 weeks. So try the experiment. Now, if you're going to do the experiment, do it all out. Don't say, well, I'm just going to have a hamburger today, and then maybe on Thursday I have a hot dog or a steak. No, just go completely animal flesh free for 2 or 3 weeks and get your plant proteins in. And don't be afraid of nuts and seeds. People worry about the fats there. Don't be afraid of, cashew butter or wholesome peanut butter. Eat those foods and see if there's a difference. And I think, people, I think, are very confused by all the different messages.
Yeah.
And it really is a matter of, when you experiment with this, what do you conclude? Because you know your body, you know how it felt, you can tell the differences. I think that's a good way to do it. Now, of course, if you're going to look at research, don't go to the internet and just Google things. Go to PubMed. .gov. Go to these websites that have published research, and don't look for the first study that confirms what you believe. Look for a trend. Look for many studies, because things get published all the time that have to be recanted. So look for the trends. Look for the 100 references under this study that support it. And then you do your own research, but do the research on yourself and decide, because if that happens to you, if you're in tremendous pain and in 2 weeks your pain is gone and your blood pressure's down and your cholesterol and your blood sugar's down, you're going to be a believer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we need to watch our proteins then.
I think we should at least be thinking about it and try to listen to what nature's taught us, and I believe what the research is telling us too.
Dr. Tim McKnight, as we talked with the doc this morning, we appreciate him being here as always.